This month's Ashes of Creation livestream continued the 2022 tradition of outstanding live streams. This month's stream was focused on the gathering systems and also a discussion on PvP and griefing, which has been a hot topic recently to say the least. To start out, the YouTube comment was, will there be advanced UI customization such as the ability to hide certain name tags and quickly switch between different setups for PvP and PvE? The answer was yes, they intend to have a very high level of customization within the UI. Then they talked about the Extra Life 24-hour live stream, which is coming up. They are planning to do a Pathfinder campaign that is related to the Tower of Carfin dungeon that will be prominent in Alpha 2. Then they got into the PvP and griefing discussion. Basically, Steven reiterated that the corruption system is based on older systems, but has been heavily updated to account for the deficiencies in those systems. The goal of the corruption system is to deter griefing while still having risk and reward and meaningful PvP present. He mentioned that targeted harassment could be a reportable offense and GMs might take action in those cases. He ended by saying Ashes has a core identity which is not changing, and that identity is of a game that has a lot of risk to reward dynamics. What they will do, however, is tweak the existing systems such as corruption to find the right balance, but any changes will be within that framework. I have thought about weighing in on this, but I have already touched on it in my previous videos. I have further ideas and thoughts that go beyond those videos, but I am like many of you. I am kind of tired of hearing about it at this point. If you want my thoughts, ask me in the Discord and I will elaborate in there. Now we get into the gathering section. First, I want to point out the new UI for gathering is very clean. We also got a look at the new inventory UI, which looks solid as well. One thing I will note is Steven didn't gather that long and his inventory was filling up pretty fast. This is something I was curious about because they have said limited inventory space is a big reason we will need to use mules and caravans. And that definitely seems to be the case so far. Another little thing I noticed is the mount now stays in place in the world and you can dismount it like Arcage. It doesn't follow you around like an Arcage, but I assume it will eventually. One big change that they mentioned is that all trees are now gatherable, and most things in the world that look like they can be gathered are now gatherable. This is a big change from Alpha 1 and one of the areas they are asking for feedback on. Also, you may not know what you are gathering when you gather it. Mining a stone might give basalt, or it might give iron. Mining a tree might give redwood, or it might just give wood. Next we get into the actual gathering. The list of the items that were gathered are as follows. Number 1, redwood lumber. Number 2, wood. Number 3, basalt. Number 4, iron. Number 5, apples. And number 6, gloomy pros petals. He started with tree gathering, which has some really intricate falling physics. Each branch has its own collision. The ground kicks up dust when the tree impacts, or snow when impacting the snow. The tree dissolve animation was really well done, and the tree regrowth animation was really well done. Keep in mind everything was sped up for this demonstration. The mining animation was fairly standard, but the iron nodes did have a different look than the basalt nodes after mining was complete. Apple gathering had a nice animation. Gloomy pros, which is a winter seasonal flower, had a really nice gathering animation as well. They also talked about surveying, which is a tool that gatherers can place down to survey an area to show where static resources are located, the chance of rare spawns in the area, and it can uncover hidden resources. An example of a hidden resource that was given is panning for gold in a river. So players can not only mine for gold, but also pan for it in a river as well. Surveying can also show the gatherer what seasons certain gatherables grow in, and the kind of watering patterns they like, which ties into the land management system, which we will get into shortly. Also, as you progress in your gathering profession, surveying gets more powerful. The size of the area can increase by placing down more pylons, and the time surveyed can increase. Next, they talked about land management, which I assume is an extension of the World Manager algorithm. Resources have a normal respawn rate that can be affected by player activity in a region. Overgathering can have a detrimental effect on the respawn rates, regrowth rates, and the chances for rare spawns to occur. Some examples that were given of this are overhunting of rabbits could cause the wolves to move to another area to hunt rabbits. Invasive species of plants could affect the growth rates of other plants, so players might need to harvest the invasive species. Cutting down all the trees in an area could damage the land and cause the respawn rates of trees to be much longer. There are also things the players can do it to increase the land score to offset the negative effects. Further, the system can even be weaponized by your enemies to damage your lands. Mayors can enact policies that can offset some negative land management effects. The system applies to the open world, but also applies to freehold plots as well, so things like crop rotations and watering schedules might matter on your freehold plots. They also touched on team gathering. Some gathering nodes, for example, a very large tree, might be able to be chopped down, then players could use a two-man saw to extract even more wood from the tree. Steven was asked about resource expertise and declined to comment and said he will talk more about that in a future update. Steven was asked if mobs could knock down trees and said yes, that might happen. It might be a way for players to track a roaming boss, or it could be an interesting way for an encounter to start. And that was it for the gathering portion. Next they got into the character art. First they had the skeleton warrior, which Steven mentioned might be a part of the extra live stream. Then they had the bandit slaver. And then they had the bandits. And finally, some base models for the spear, shield, and mace, which Steven teased might be something we see in a very near livestream. Then they did a studio update. Steven mentioned the focus of the team is heavily on the Alpha 2 playable area. The first question was basically, can low-level characters max a profession? And the answer was basically no, as there are several requirements that more or less require a higher character level. The second question was, can mana drain abilities affect green players? And the answer was no, not without flagging first. The third question was, does killing a mount, mule, or battle pet give corruption? The answer was yes, but less so than killing a player. The next question was about naval weapon firing and whether these would hit where aimed or there would need to be some leading of the projectile. And the answer was it would depend on the projectile speed. Some projectiles are very fast, such as the harpoon, and others much slower, such as the potion launcher. The next question was about level brackets for arena. Steven said there will not be level brackets for arena, just a minimum level to enter them. The next question was, how will players build ships without the shipbuilding profession? The answer was different professions make different components. Then players assemble the ship at a harbor with a recipe. Then he was asked, can a party of gatherers extract more resources than a solo player? And the answer was, only if the area has a lot of group gathering nodes. The next question was, will weapons change size based on the size of the player model? And the answer was yes. The final question was, will OpenSea content have better materials in higher abundance? The answer was yes, and that is why they had to increase the risk in these areas by turning off the corruption system. That ended the Q&A and the live stream. I will leave you with the Scarecrow sandal. If you liked this video, consider subscribing, and with that, I will see you in the next video.